the 18th of September 2024. Hello everybody, welcome back. I think we got a really good show for everyone tonight. At least for... I'm going to be your host, Dana Durnford, and you can call in at 709-589-4406. We've had multiple reactors and fuel pools melt down. Around 38 reactor cores are missing. Each reactor core is equal to about 100 Cheronobyls. And they never stopped growing food in this nuclear wasteland where they picked up 30 million one-ton bags. And it kind of irks me because everybody gets sick that eats this stuff. And so as a symbolic gesture, should degenerate Japan recall billions of pounds of radioactive rice and peaches sold each year to preserve human life? I know, like, they've been shipping a lot more than that every year. And it's not just rice. And they contaminated the whole planet with radioactive fallout anyway. But growing food in a nuclear wasteland, I got a few issues with that. That's unprecedented and stupid. It's evil. So we're going to talk about it. I hope everybody's doing reasonably well. Contaminated rice piles up. Veggies from the evacuation zone. So should food be grown in the evacuation zone? If you can't live there, why are they growing food there? And over-limit towns reopen. I do that on the big screen because a lot of people are using tablatures and cell phones, and it's almost impossible to read it even then, right? But at least this way they got... So this story was 2013. We're going to go through headlines. And it's just insane. The whole story is just insane. Officials have lifted the farming ban for Tamora, an area that had been part of the evacuation zone until recently. But once it's contaminated with radiation, it's always contaminated. And because it's nuclear meltdowns, and not just one but multiple, the radiation levels of Tamora are lower than Koriyama. Incredible numbers in Koriyama. And just because it's lower than somewhere doesn't mean it's safe. Actually, I got the number. Let me bring up the numbers of Koriyama from Unsclear, ERPA. Oh yeah. I'm not quite myself here tonight. I've been doing back-breaking work all day. Until about 3 hours ago. Since early this morning. It's a good thing too, because summer is officially gone today. Here we go. There we go. Koriyama City. This row, the second row is the population 341,000 and 162,842 atoms per square meter of cesium-137. I forgot, I guess I should import that too so you got some context. Dana, what's wrong with you? You're not yourself tonight. I know, right? Just a little bit slack. Everything good. Here we go. United Nations Scientific Committee on the Effects of Radiation, also known as scumbag, average disposition density of 137 cesium on soil per square meter. Per square meter. So that row, the first row is the district communities. Next row is population in the community, and the next one is just cesium 137 because they don't count anything else in Japan. They don't count plutonium, uranium, or americium, or neptunium, or strontium. I don't care about none of it. They only count cesium, but they don't actually count cesium. But this is United Nations numbers, 162,000 atoms. The evacuation zone in nuclear plants pre-Fukushima nuclear meltdowns was 185 counts per minute. Not 185,000, but 185. Anyway. The radiation levels tomorrow are lower than Koriyama. And I got tomorrow there, but I'm not going to go look for it right now. It's in a different place. And Fukushima City, but they are still significant. So they're lower than Fukushima City and Koriyama and Fukushima City. So if George jumps off a 100-foot bridge, Tim jumps off a 70-foot bridge, and Upak jumps off a 60-foot bridge, and they all die, which one was better? Because if you eat the food, you still die. If you live in that environment, you're breathing it, drinking it, washing in it, cooking in it, doing your laundry in it, showering in it. That's the quickest way to get sick. That's the quickest way to get stupid, actually. And then when they used the millisievert, which is total dishonest to use the word millisievert in this application, because the communities are not getting gamma shines or X-rays and neutron bombardments or beta rays from Fukushima plant. They got radioactive fallout, physical atoms. And that's why you see in this number here, this is not millisieverts, this is physical atoms. And so every time you see the word millisieverts or microsieverts, for exposure set by the International Committee on Radiation Protection, also known as United Nations, same as this kooky bunch right here is United Nations. And they got a whole bunch of them, ERPA, the ICRP, International Atomic Energy Agency, unclear. Using the range of reading taken today from monitoring equipment tomorrow, we calculated the radiation levels below. So this is United Nations doing this. As long as you're below the international ICRP limits. It's like if you're sitting there with Ted Bundy and you ask Ted, if I put a gun in my mouth and pull the trigger, will I die? And Ted says no. So you puts the gun in your mouth and pulls the trigger and dies. These people are actually insane. And again, right there, they're talking about millisieverts. Each millisievert is 1,000 microsieverts. And the government standard for reopening the zones that the levels has to be under 20 millisieverts, 20,000 microsieverts. We've never heard telling like that before. And on top of that, they're only going to measure cesium. This is why the poll refers to the Japanese as degenerate. Well, nuclear industry is degenerate, right? Try finding anything in the nuclear industry that's not a degenerate. And if you do, go buy a lottery ticket. Any vegetables grown in the region, in a nuclear wasteland that is abandoned, will be subject to the same radiation testing as other food from the region is. again, any food grown in a nuclear wasteland would be subject to the same radiation testing. I can't wrap my mind around, well, I can, I guess, unfortunately, but I'm pretty sure the average person can't wrap their mind around why this is allowed to happen, right? Anything below 100 atoms a kilogram is allowed on the market. Now, they're only acknowledging Cesium-137 because people are too stupid to know there's other isotopes, and so they get away with doing this. With no distinction between something reading 0 becquerels a kilogram and something reading 99 atoms a kilogram. The previous limit was 0.1 atom per kilogram. 0.1 atom per kilogram. So you need 10 kilograms with 1 atom. Now it's 100 atoms per kilogram. They just do whatever they want. They make up a rule, or a so-called rule, a number, and then they enforce it. And then there's no dissenting voices ever allowed. And this is the stupidest thing you can do. And let me explain why it's stupid. There's a lot of reasons that it's stupid, but because they know better, and we know this because the Japan National Cancer Center said the number of patients rose by 865,000 extra cancers in 2012, a year after Fukushima. And so you would think common sense would prevail somewhere in the third biggest economy on the planet. But there's an agenda to get you sick. And I know it sounds crazy, but they did find one private incineration facility willing to burn the rice. If you burn radiation, you liberate it back into the environment so it can go hunt down another human and make them sick and die. It's physical atoms, not millisieverts. Not burning millisieverts, they're burning physical atoms. See? All the rice pulled off the market since the start of the disaster has been piling up in warehouses. This was 2013. Trying to go easy on the graphics so we can get through a few stories for a change. Yeah. April 25th, 2013. So just 2 years later. We should all hang our head in shame and pick up a baseball bat and get a ticket to Japan and deal with it. All the rice pulled off the market since the start of the disaster was piling up in warehouses. Of course, they've been shipping it to Canada. Canada removed all restrictions after 93 days. And there was a 50... I think I might have lost my numbers, folks. There's 55 countries banned it in 14 prefectures, not just Fukushima prefecture. And prefecture is a huge territory. Basically half of Japan, because you're talking about the big prefectures, where the food was banned by 55 countries for a decade. And then to remove the restrictions after a lousy decade, hi everybody. Here we go. I'm going to keep going here. So when you got almost 1 million cancers in the first year, just realize that not everybody got health care. Not everybody's diagnosed. And pretending that this never had nothing to do with Fukushima, when that was the only catalyst, clearly, that would have had these implications to cause such a... And cancer is not the only thing. Heart, liver, lung, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline, Alzheimer's, dementia, autism, diabetes, Down syndrome. The first studies they do after nuclear accidents are autism and Down syndrome. What does that tell us? They did find one private incinerator facility willing to burn the rice. Farmers involved suggested contaminated rice should be fed to livestock used for food. So livestock that's going to be sold for food, let them eat the radioactive. Maybe they forgot what happened in 2011 when they fed cattle contaminated rice straw, and we got a lot of headlines on that, haven't we? It was hideous. The contaminated cattle made it to market and were later discovered causing great worry about the safety of the food supply. The article did not specifically mention the potential of putting this rice into pet food, but does suggest using it for non-human consumption. There's a story, a couple of stories, a lot of stories, a couple of crazy stories. So Israel detonated, I don't know, several thousand pagers. Apparently Hezbollah in Lebanon was using pagers because they figured it was harder to track them than a cell phone is. But some of the big media, very popular media, is suggesting that Israel planted explosives in the phones at the manufacturers, and then because they knew it was going this and this, but very reliable sources are also suggesting it's done with a software hack, which means everybody's vulnerable. If this software hack gets out into the wild, and there's lots of crazies out there. And then today in Beirut, there was 3 people died from exploding walkie-talkies, which it's hard to trust having a cell phone around you now, because you don't know if they're doing it with a hack or did they put explosives in. We got both stories that got a lot of credibility, but there's a lot of flaws with putting explosives in a phone, right? And it was allegedly done in Taiwan. The whole story is crazy. Let's go back to this. The article does not specifically mention the potential of putting the radioactive rice in the pet food, but does suggest using it for non... Now, does anyone think for a second Japan wouldn't do that? Is there anybody on the planet that actually thinks Japan is not evil enough to do that and worse? They'll just make baby food out of it, knowing Japan, right? Another idea floated is for biofuels. It could be used, processed without releasing contamination. It doesn't work that way. You can't contain the radiation. You can't contain the radiation. If you burn it, you're talking enormous temperatures, by the way, you can't destroy it either. You're just going to liberate it into the environment. Contamination. It's radioactive fallout. And so you see the word contamination appear a lot, right? The farmers involved pointed out some of the rice now below 100 becquerels a kilogram contamination limits 2 years later. Well, the number, because first off, the farmers are the very last people should be checking the rice. And we got tons of stories where the government gave them shitty, obsolete Geiger counters. Instead of, the first year was 500 atoms a kilogram, and said that if it's over that, you can just mix it with some rice that's not so radioactive. It's probably due to sitting in storage long enough for the Cesium-134 to decay enough to lower the levels, which decays every 2 years. Well, it's 2 years of detonations every second at almost the speed of light. They call it a decay, but it's detonations, almost at the speed of light. You got something that goes at the speed of light? Nuclear industry does. And they like to put it in your body and screw you up for the rest of your life. Oh, I got James calling in. Way to go. Good stuff. Hello, James. How are you, my friend?
Oh, Dana, I just wanted to call real quick because I just wanted to give an update about everything that's happened in the last like 24 hours or so.
Okay.
So as of now, there's about like I just looked. There's about 199 plays on that remix contest, and I just think that's just the most remarkable thing in the world right now, because this whole AI music phenomenon that's taking place right now is going to be so ubiquitous in the years to come, and what's happening right now is going to be really remembered in the future.
That's true.
Right?
Yes. Yeah.
So we're making history as we speak, you know, and so I don't know how to explain what happened the other day, where I was thinking of this robot theme, which kicked off the whole time, and you started and you're like, it's weird, like, you know, James Lucid.
Because I was working for hours making a robot. That's great, though.
I was
like it.
Really stunned by that. I'm
like, sure.
What are the chances of
really,
that?
Really, what is the odds? Because it's probably 10 years since I've been using robots, and all of a sudden yesterday I started jamming one, or the day before I started jamming one together. And then we're just about to go live, and you sends me a new song that you've been working on for a long time with a robot. I thought that was really cool.
No, it literally only took me 30 minutes to put that together, to be honest. Like, I left that morning, and I heard about this whole context going on Suno.
Yeah.
And I'm like, they're giving out $100,000 worth of prizes. You just have to remix this dude's, this guy I've never heard of before.
Sure.
And I'm like looking into it. I'm like, what? Like, and so like the top prize is $25,000, and if you win, you go to New York. They fly you out to New York, and you're in the DJ booth, and you play your remix in front of like thousands of people. And it's like, holy shit! Like, why not try it? You know?
Oh hell, why not?
And,
oh yeah.
And so it's like, you know, the thing that was running through my head was the whole stories that are coming out of Japan right now with the robots. They're getting 3 grams of, you know, and now what's really scary, Dana, like the headlines that are coming out today are that the robots are glitching out.
Right. The videos are not working, all kinds of little weird stuff.
But the lyrics that I put together the day before,
I seen glitches,
was the whole point.
Yeah, good point, actually.
It's like, hey, little robot, you're glitching out. The humans don't know what's going on. And it goes on from there. And
déjà vu, eh?
Then, isn't that weird?
Yeah, no kidding, man. You nailed it. And then I had made a robot on top of that. It was right out of the blue, right? Probably. It's
some kind of synchronicity.
It is 100%, isn't it?
I don't know what's happening here.
Yeah, pretty amazing, I thought.
You know, and it's really been wonderful because, you know, Colette, she's such a sweetheart.
Isn't she ever, right?
I just rapid fire upload tracks. Like, I'm not expecting anyone to listen to any of this, you know?
Yeah.
And she watches all of it. She's like, oh, this is great, you know, and she's such a supporter, you know.
She has been too, man, many years now, right? And gets it. She gets it,
She's
right?
been hanging it.
She gets it.
We're
man.
lucky that we got, and Richard, I mean, you know, we got a great group of people that, you know, it's just
that gets it, yeah.
But it's really you and Kevin, and I'm telling you, like just Kevin the other day did a great video. He inspired just this wave. He's like, he understands. We're all frustrated.
Oh yeah, incredible knowledge, that guy. Yeah, he's been at it forever, right? He's been at it forever, that guy.
You know,
he knows everybody on top of it. Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry, James. You're breaking up a little bit there. Keep your phone a bit closer. Yeah, that's okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. Is this better?
It is. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, great. but it was just the video it was just the baby orca that has washed the shore in Carmel Beach the other day.
Yeah.
And how I can't recall anything like that ever happening before.
Well, the mother, the family would be hanging around close by, very visible, right?
And they were never.
They weren't found. They weren't seen.
There.
No, that's right. Yeah. And
isn't there a formula? Isn't there a formula for every whale that actually beaches that's like 10%?
Yeah, it's considered 10%. What we find is 10% at best, and probably worse.
At best.
Yeah, at best. That's the consensus, anyway.
That baby orca was probably the only one in its pod that got to the beach.
Yeah. Well, like, people don't realize the peanut head whales we've been looking at for over a decade, killer whales. The West Coast, are starving to death. There are other options. There's halibut. There's the giant Pacific octopus. There was, there's other species because like a typical killer whale will eat over 300 species. They'll eat birds. They'll eat what they want because they're the killer whale. They're the apex predator. And so they're showing up emaciated, but the reason they were emaciated is not because of lack of food. There is food. Was because they have leukemia. Right. Cancer. They have so much radiation in their body, it produces so much white blood cells, they displace most of the red blood cells carrying oxygen and nutrition, right? And so this is why, and we see it all the time, and the horror story of people in the hospital with chemotherapy getting radiation and chemo combinations, and they always die, and they can't, they lose all this weight, they lose all their hair, and et cetera, et cetera. And this is what we're seeing in the killer whales for over a decade. Yeah, go ahead, James, I'm sorry.
But the whole point is the only thing that could cause something like that could be so radical is the fact that Einstein warned that this could happen. Einstein warned about this, and everyone ignored Einstein as later, Kevin talks about this, but it's so evident. How could anyone ignore Einstein? But he did. If the world has turned their back on Einstein, and it's his worst nightmare that's taking place that we're living through.
It's everybody's nightmare, isn't it? Yeah, and now they don't realize it. But...
And so through this whole thing, this whole experimentation through AI music, with promoting these tracks like Nuclear's Golden Boy that reached almost 9,000 people. And, I worked really hard on this, and, I really wanted to put through that whole aspect about that whole INL, the scale that goes from 1 to 7.
Right, the Shindu scale, yeah. The Shindu scale.
Something that if you hear something at a scale of 7 and you're a layman, you're going to think, oh, well, at least it's not a 10.
Right, 100%,
and
yeah.
It's manipulated exclusively for that effect.
That's my take
and
on it.
So
and Taiwan, which has massive earthquakes, does the same scale. Go ahead, James. Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
And so there's in verse 2 of Nuclear Golden Boy, I worked really, really hard. So it's this, it worked through this whole thing about this imaginative person named a CEO of this nuclear firm or whatever. His name is Mr. Blackwell. Let's go with that. But it's just this inscription, but it gets to this line where it's like the scale they use goes from 1 to 7, and that was what I wanted AI to understand. I'm like, we've got to get through to that.
Yeah.
And what it came back with was the most genius line. Was the next one? Who builds? It was like the scale they use goes from 1 to 7. Who builds that crooked rail was what it came up with. And it was like perfect. I'm like, holy crap,
yeah.
Like, AI understands this is all crooked. Like, who would come up with this crooked rail? So it's just, and that reached so many people that probably have never understood, and because Price-Anderson Act is mentioned in the lyrics.
Yeah, right.
You know, it's this punk rock kind of theme, you know, and so it just makes you wonder, like, if you can just reach a couple of people out there where it connects the dots in their mind that they've been lied to about everything they've heard about nuclear energy. Like every radio commercial about saying, oh, this is clean energy, like blah, blah, blah. Don't forget about all the cost overruns. That's all just bureaucratic, whatever, but this is going to be the future. Like, it's all bullshit. People are going to figure it out.
It's a trance. The majority of the population is in a trance. And
right.
If you can break a part of that trance, in your case, and a lot of people's cases, it's the laws of nuclear. You break that trance, and then you look at the other stuff with an open mind, and you start seeing how rotten the apples all are. And they all land right by the tree. And who's the tree? Is the universities, the media. Go ahead, James. I'm sorry. Go.
No, that's exactly what I was trying to do. And so then, you know, with that promotion going on, I promote the other track, which is this like K-pop. Well, it's J-pop. It's the theme that I put it through. And it's this real catchy kind of the music that you would expect to hear when you go into the mall on the weekend. You know, it's like pumping that bass, and it's like, you know, oh yeah,
right,
baby, that kind of thing.
Sure, yep.
And it's like scientists are mystified, you know. So and this is the funny thing, right? So in verse 2, there's this part where it's like, it's really cute because there's backup vocals and everything.
Yeah.
And it's real. This is what's alarming about YouTube, right? So literally, the lines like they don't talk about. It's like they don't talk about other things or something, and then it brings up something about. They blame it all on climate change. And the backup vocals are like, ooh, climate change. But they never talk about Fukushima's name. And the backup vocals are all,
beautiful, yeah.
Don't say the name. It. And then it goes into the chorus. It's like scientists, you know, it's like they're baffled, they're mystified, they're stumped, they're curious. And it's like, oh, yeah, you know, it's like all catchy and vibrant and dancey and everything. And it all works.
It does, yeah.
It all came together perfectly.
And
that's such an embarrassment to the damn scientists. If any of those scientists were to hear that, they'd all be cringing and they're, oh my God, this just makes us want to just kill ourselves.
The best,
that's what it's for.
The best songs, the songs that seem to really resonate are songs that tell a story. And it's typically a story that they're not familiar with. But the song explains the story, right? And so like you've seen Bob Dylan with that Hurricane song, and which inspired a movie, right? But the whole, you know, I remember being very, very young when I heard the song, and I got it, right? This guy was served injustice, and he spent all these years, and he refused to bow down or buckle down. A lot of people just really resonated. So when the movie came out, of course, it was a big hit immediately because of that, and the song, the nice catchy beats and everything. And that's what I mean. Like, it's amazing how a single song, if it can find its way out there, and if it's telling a story, it's better than any documentary, it's better than any movie, it's better than any book, because it has that rhythm. Go ahead.
Yeah, in the nuclear industry, they knocked all that stuff down. This has been tried before. That way back before, like in the 70s, they tried all Bruce Springsteen, and they all sold out. They all got bought out or snuffed out or one. But the nuclear industry, they weren't prepared. Their PR's not prepared for this revolution with AI. They never saw this coming.
Oh, they can't stop that one.
So they don't know what to do. Like, Calm Down Charlie and Craig have been absent ever since I called them out on just a few AI tracks. And they've just been like, oh my God. Like, they haven't commented.
They
freaked
out.
I'm just hoping to get Calm Down Charlie off you.
Yeah.
And he's nowhere to be found now.
They freaked out. They called in the show and they even put out a little video. And this was them freaking out. They literally melted down themselves and freaked out over that Calm Down Charlie song, right? And it's still just a fantastic song, man. It tells a story.
Well, I actually cringe at it because, like, there's like cliche words like neon beams. I make sure all that stuff is cleaned up by now. I've learned so much since then, right? But regardless,
it tells a story, though.
Well, the fact that you care and you like anything I do, that's amazing. So,
no, it's fantastic.
But, let me let you go. I didn't want to spend this much time, but I just think so much for everyone that has supported this, like Colette, Rich, everybody, Albert. Everyone's helped.
We're just trying.
We're such a great group.
Because, that could be the very thing that changes the game, right? Okay, my friend.
Yeah.
Bless you, buddy. Love you. You take care now.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Right,
okay, James. Yep. Bye-bye. That's James Lucid. Calling in. You see him in the comments section quite constantly. James is typically known as the best one-liner in the business. There's a lot of T-shirts on my site are from James's one-liners that I've seen in the comment sections. I was just like, holy crap. Well, because, I take the long route, so I'm telling the story and I'm going through the details and everything else. And then the little one-liners kind of beats me to the punchline a lot of the times, which is great. Think about this. Japan test finds radiation in infant food. I'm not laughing. I'm trying not to scream. Concerns about food safety. Japan is the very last people concerned. This was the latter part of 2011, the same year as the Meltdowns. Oh, yeah. And we'll have our robot back up and running. I'm going to build a new one. The other one's just too big, too long. Legs are too long. You can't get them up here. And so we're going to print out faces, print out body radiation signs and hands maybe and feet, so that you get these little radiation signs whenever I'm flicking the little robot around. Because that stuff can get pretty funny too sometimes. Concerns about food safety continued almost 9 months after the accident. The reason I'm laughing is because they had 36 or 38 reactor cores melt down and hit it successfully. And just before we were going live, I was trying to remember what I'd done. Where did I put a headline about France? And let me tell that story maybe. It only takes a minute. So France put out a study of 1 million to 10 million atoms per cubic meter of air in updating the northern hemisphere. And this is the model. This one's based on 16 days of radioactive fallout, 1 million, 10 million atoms. So if you're in any place where the yellow is too, you had 1 million to 10 million atoms of Cesium-137, which pulses energy 600 feet every second. And just wait for the punchline here. So anyway, on the second year, or the same year as Fukushima, France had an accident in one of their nuclear storage facilities. They were packaging cesium for storage, contaminants, of 17 atoms a kilogram, a Cesium-137. But their radioactive fallout model, which you're looking at right now, and I'm just looking for the story for the model. And I was talking instead of looking, then I was scrolling away like the happiest place on the planet. Anyway, I need to find that headline and put it with the Fukushima stories from France. Here it is. Of the radioactive fallout of 17 atoms per kilogram. But then they have this model from these melted reactors. And this was right away. This it came out later, right? The IRS and the French government experts on nuclear and radiation risk at 1 million to 10 million times Cesium-137. You're talking about an invisible snowstorm that covers the entire planet. By the way, Cesium immediately damaged the heart muscles of birds and animals and mammals and children and everybody else. And so if you're seeing an uptick in people dying of cardiac arrest, don't rule out Fukushima. And radiation is known to do that, by the way. So that model you're looking at there is only based on 7 days. This was their model based on 16 days. So let's play that again. This is the French government. Now we have models from all kinds of countries. There's only 16 days. And the plume is covering all of North America and the rest of the planet, right? It's not going to stop there. And it's a continuous plume. When you look at the plume, watch it coming out of Japan. That's coming out of Japan. It never stops coming out and spreading out. But it never stops coming out. Tests found a combined 30 atoms per kilogram of Cesium-134 and Cesium-137. 11 atoms per kilogram, children start to see holes in their hearts. At 50 atoms a kilogram, and because you're talking about bioaccumulation, 30 easily transpires into 50. At 50 atoms a kilogram, children have permanent holes in their hearts and permanent lesions into their organs. But that's also true, the permanent lesions to the organ is true for adults at 50 atoms a kilogram. So these models are 1 million to 10 million atoms per cubic meter of air. So the entire drinking water supply and food supply is compromised right away. And I know what you're saying. You're like, Dana, well, why you got a poll up there tonight? Should degenerate Japan recall billions of pounds of radioactive rice sold each year to preserve human life? Because a lot of people will buy a 50-pound bag, and they might have 25 or 30 pounds left. And so when they finally finish that, then they're going to get sick. Their children will be sick. Their heart problems, liver problems, lung problems, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline problems. You're talking about mutated stem cells, mutated hormones permanently for the, like children and birds and insects and animals and mammals. The baby species is going to be brutalized. And so how can you only have Cesium-134 and 137? It doesn't travel by itself at all. And for every 137, there's 100 times Strontium-90 produced. It doesn't travel by itself. It travels with all the isotopes. Like these models are talking about cesium, but the model is going to be full of plutonium and curium and uranium and americium and neptunium and strontium. 1,000 other fission products. Babies could, so to come out and say babies could still drink the formula every day without any effect on their health, this is simply not true. We have perpetual academic studies showing this is not true. Infants and young children are thought to be especially vulnerable to radiation poisoning, which can increase cancer risk and other illnesses. But the media is so quick to gut you and leave you bleed out on the side of the road. Woo, I don't know if I'll be doing a show tomorrow. I spent 4.5 hours grinding rust off steel, and then I had to take the compressor and use the blower to blow it all to the dust off all the hidden spots. And then you got to use the power washer to rinse everything, and then you got to use the blower to knock all the water out of there. Because this was the last hot day we're going to have till next year. We went from, like, today was around 85 degrees. Tomorrow it's going to be around 35 or 40. And it'll be like that for the next, right up until next spring. It'll get colder and colder and colder. And so I was very fortunate to get that done today, but I was brutalized. I spent 4.5 hours spraying paint, trim-clad rust paint. And so I used a compressor right on a paint gun. My goodness, that's such a great way to do things, right? Your paint goes a very long way. And you do such a beauty. You're not putting too much on. It all looks really good. But I was wearing a full face today, with filters on each side of my face. My eyes were protected. But I had so much rust. I spent forever in the shower. I had to use 6 face cloths. I had to wash my hair 5 times. I got to come up with a better... I shouldn't be doing this stuff. I'm not healthy enough to do this stuff. But I knew this would be the last day I can get the paint to bake on. If I didn't do it today, I have to wait till spring, right? And so I just went for it from the very early morning till 3 hours ago. So I am whooped. But I'm particularly happy to have it done. I never got everything done that I wanted done, but I got a coat on everything. 4.5 hours spraying paint. I was burnt out. I wasn't even going to do a show tonight, but I feel guilty if I don't do a show. I'm going to pay for this tomorrow, all right? I won't be able to move tomorrow. You watch. Radioactive particles have made their way into vegetables, beef, fish, and the nation's staple, rice. Readings have been reported voluntarily by producers. Okay, this is crazy stuff we're getting into now. So you haven't got universities, you haven't got academics, you haven't got the government out there doing the readings. The readings are reported voluntarily by the farmers who don't know what they're doing. By producers and consumers. Because Japan does not require radiation testing for most foods. Japan does not require radiation testing. And when did this story come out? Let me come back to the beginning of it. Oh, we're still in that story. Japan, oh yeah, this is December 6, 2011. So that's the appropriate picture right there. Damn bananas. Because Japan does not require radiation testing for most foods. So, if you think that this industry has any redeeming qualities, you got to realize how out of control an industry can actually get. And the whole legacy of nuclear, every time you look at nuclear, you get heartbroken, right? Ratings have been reported voluntarily by producers and consumers because Japan does not require radiation testing for most food. If that's not the most frightening statement, what actually is, I wonder? The spokesman said airborne cesium particles might have entered the formula. This they're saying through the air drying effect of the baby formula. They dehydrated with air. And so what they're trying to say is the formula wasn't contaminated before it got there. It was contaminated when they were drying it. But this is ludicrous to suggest that 38 reactor cores melting down didn't contaminate everything. He said the company had been diligent in checking radiation levels in water, but had not taken enough care to filter for airborne radioactivity. So the media is your enemy. They're trying to sell you an apology story from the industry that knew better, that that understood that everything was contaminated, and when they got called out about it, then they came out with their public relation firms. Yuriko Masuda, an official at the government-affiliated National Institute of Health Sciences, told a public broadcaster, NHK, that there was no need for panic because formula is diluted before it's fed to the babies. Well, first off, there's no safe dose of anthropogenic man-made radiations. When it gets in the baby's white blood cells are directed to attack the radiation because there's pulsing energy every second at the speed of light. And so the more it got in their bodies, the more attacks are going on with white blood cells for the rest of the baby's life. So the baby's immune system is compromised. Now the baby is developing. So cesium pulses energy 600 feet. So it's producing radioactive stem cells and radioactive hormones for the rest of the baby's life. So it's 100% the worst case scenario because it's baby formula. And you don't eat baby formula. I don't eat baby formula. Guess who eats baby formula? Oh, that's right, babies. The most vulnerable imaginable because they're producing a prolific amount of stem cells and hormones, and it's going to be incredibly radioactive. How do you think that's going to work, right? You can't stop the damage, and to continue to feed them this stuff is unconscionable. So the public relation, this one is Associated Press, public relation comes out and spins a good apology. The most evil creature is a journalist and an academic. There is no problem because the levels within the government's limit. Well, that is a problem because the limits were jacked up magnitude of 1,000% post-Fukushima. There is no safe level because everything is contaminated. That's why you got the limit. So there is no limit. They're not checking. They're only acknowledged in Cesium-137, which means there is no limit. When you refuse to acknowledge all the other isotopes, like the reactors don't run on cesium, they run on uranium, plutonium. So the minute that you only acknowledge cesium is the acknowledgement that you're a degenerate monster. And Japan is a degenerate monster. In every sense of the word, too. The health ministry official in charge of food safety said of the radiation, again, they say it for tea, they say it for everything else. Sent 3 reactors into a meltdown. So where's the prominence? Because a single nuclear meltdown is catastrophic. There's 3 that they acknowledge. There's actually 4, and 8 fuel pools that melted down. Each fuel pool had around 4 reactor cores into it. They were at the top of the buildings that no longer exist. Some of the radiation has crept into the food. Really crept into the food. Crept into the food, eh? Imagine crept into the food. What else has crept into the food, Dana? Oh, I don't know. Hang on a second. Let me show you some of this. This is the Neptunium-239 dispersal from TEPCO's numbers. It crept into the food on the entire planet. Quite a coincidence. This is a model of the Xenon-133. That crept into the food worldwide. It didn't creep into the food. What a creepy thing to say, eh? It crept into the food. Ho ho! It crept into the food. Like, being evil seems to be part of the criteria to get the job and to work in the nuclear industry, or as a journalist, or as an academic. You got to kill everything in order to make a wage. You know, I created this meme. Fukushima is like eating a banana, walking in the sunshine, flying on an airplane. And they've been doing that for 80 years. 80 years. 80 years of being scumbags. And this is how to get a paycheck. This is how to pay their mortgage. This is how to go on world cruise vacations. They live very, very wealthy. All they got to do is cut your throat at every turn. Some of the radiation has crept into the food, Dana. What, really? The schools are completely compromised. They're not going to teach them any critical thinking skills, but they're also not going to teach them anything about anthropogenic man-made radiation. Yeah, they'll give them free Hulk book case or book bags or something. It's below the government's limit of 200 becquerels per kilogram set for milk of cesium-137. So what's the limit for uranium? What's the limit for plutonium? What's the limit for curium? Which, by the way, is the biggest byproduct of the radiated fuel rods. Not all food samples are monitored for radiation. Reading have been voluntarily reported by the manufacturer. Why does being evil come so natural to these people? Was their parents like that or something? That's how they got the job. Oh, yeah, they're an evil little bastard. They'll be just fine. You can hire them. Including the latest by Tokyo-based. So the baby food is not monitored, but somebody monitored, found radiation, reported it, and they come out and spun the story, right? Many consumers are worried. Some stores are labeling where the food was grown or caught, allowing shoppers to opt for imports or products from other parts of the country deemed safe. Oh, there's nothing safe in Japan. Yeah, it's safe. Next. I like to call this picture radiation head. Right, with a stroke of a pen, 1 billion people will be poisoned by radioactive food for the rest of their life. Radiation traces. This is not traces we're talking about. This is a huge amount. This is Seattle Times. Not all food samples are monitored for radiation. None of it is monitored for radiation. Radiation readings have been voluntarily reported by the manufacturers. That's simply not true. It's by the farmers themselves. You think the company's going to come out? Kellogg done the same thing with Kellogg's Rice Krispies. It was highly contaminated, and somebody discovered it, and then he came out and said, "Yeah, but it's okay. We got a couple of nuclear scientists. We'll talk to you and tell you why it's okay." Because it's like a banana, right? When someone tells me radiation like a banana to my face, I'm liable to not be a very nice person, let's put it that way. Fukushima rice to be bought by the government and mixed in Japan's rice reserves. The radioactive rice is going to be bought by the government and mixed into their rice reserves. June the 19th, 2013. Japan's national government will buy up 40,000 tons. Excuse me. Oh, it's just 40,000 tons, Dana. It's not bad. Doesn't sound bad, does it? Japan's metric, right? Which is 88 million pounds. 88 million pounds. That's a lot of rice. Tell me I'm wrong. As long as it passes 100 atoms a kilogram of cesium, they're not going to look for anything else. Never did, never will. And they're not looking for cesium because you'll find it. The rice will be mixed with rice from other regions in Japan and resold as rice reserves. And the reserve rice is put back into the market when there's a shortage or by request from food companies. This effectively makes all rice in Japan starting this fall suspect for radiation, along with any food products made from it, such as rice crackers. 88 million pounds of radioactive mixed in with other radioactive rice. This is madness. It's madness. Consumers won't have an easy way to avoid contaminated rice unless they are able to buy rice or rice products with a documented provenance from the farmer to the manufacturer. And why would you trust him? What would be the catalyst to trust these people? Well, I know anybody that's here at any amount would never trust these people. Like, we see it all on this site. We see just nightmares. These stories are nightmares. Making matters worse, Japan has strict limits on rice importation. They export rice, like they exported all the radioactive food to Canada. They couldn't ship somewhere else for a decade. That's why everybody in Canada is sick. Rice imports to Japan are banned, except for rice and processed goods. Don't believe these people. 350,000 becquerels a kilogram rice straw and more over limit rice. And the average food consumption was 220 atoms of cesium. Again, see, why are we only talking about cesium? This is why it should be legal, and it probably will be one day, to skin a nuclear scientist. People will do it like, you know, how people play volleyball and stuff like that on the beach in the summertime. In the future, people will just bring a nuclear scientist and start skinning them. All the kids will join in. There'll be popcorn. It'll be normal. This extremely high finding shows how the cesium beef outbreaks of the summer happen. Cesium beef outbreak. Cesium beef outbreak. Like botulism or something. These are monsters. How can you not call these people monsters? Should degenerate Japan recall billions of pounds of radioactive rice sold each year to preserve human life? Somebody said no, must have been an accident. Nobody's that mean. Unless Craig came by or something, I suppose. Still got a big chunk of rust stuck in my throat, I guess. I'm just broke up. Everything you see feels like it's broken. I'll sleep good tonight, I know that much. Most of the more by the looks of it. Summer's gone. I was so lucky to get that done today. Thank goodness I got that done. It was a bit of a sacrifice, but we got her. Just saw this over at Fukushima Diary. Tokyo University did a test to see how much radiation was in an average person's food on a daily basis. They took random meals, like someone consumed daily, and ran them through a detector. Based on the food test, someone would be taking in 220 becquerels of cesium. Why are we only talking about cesium? How did we become so corrupt? How did we ever, for the love of goodness, become so corrupt we only talk about cesium? How does that actually work? I'll have a new set of glasses, brand new spanking set of glasses, prescription glasses, on for my birthday, actually, on October the 5th, right? I had to remind myself when my birthday was. We're going to have something special for that day. Wait a second, I think that day is a Saturday, isn't it? It's like, if you're only going to count cesium, then everybody you went to school with should be allowed to beat you up again. Rice in Miyagi found double the radiation limits. What are you doing in Miyagi? It's a nuclear wasteland for starters. Rice grown on a farm last year was found to contain 240 atoms a kilogram of cesium. Why are we only looking for cesium? Japan Environment Minister cut short press conference on decontamination fiasco. Well, you can't decontaminate. They picked up 30 million one-ton bags on 3% of the land in Fukushima Prefecture. Woo! Japan Environment Minister cuts short press conference on decontamination fiasco. Did I go down that story? Yeah, I did. Video on the major shithead media website shows the minister making a brief statement and rushing away from the podium as the press tries to ask questions. The environment minister had said they will look into the widespread problem of failed decontamination, but nothing has been done as of yet. The ministry done nothing with the evidence given to him by the media and cited manners for not doing anything about the problem. Manners, you gotta have manners. 34 locations hired in Chernobyl's evacuation level. 2 are outside the 20-kilometer evacuation zone. 1 is inside the... Well, Tokyo is hired in Chernobyl by orders of magnitudes. Tokyo, with 36 million metropolitan people in metropolitan Tokyo. The location outside the 20-kilometer zone were subject to additional evacuations when they were first detected, which is too late. You gotta go before it shows up, stupid. TEPCO chose to not stop water leak in 2011. You like this story? Because officially TEPCO says nothing got out. TEPCO chose to not stop water leaks in 2011 over fear for their stock price. They were worried their stocks were going to hit rock bottom. They already did. So they chose not to stop the water leaks. Like calling water leaking from multiple nuclear meltdowns, I think is 100% should be a crime punishable by life in jail. Using the word leak in a nuclear meltdown should be punishable by life in jail. And who's more likely to stab you? Who's the most likely to stab you in the back? Is a journalist, right? Or a scientist. They're the number one nightmare on the planet is a journalist and an academic. TEPCO known about the massive groundwater intrusion. You call it a leak and then you say massive groundwater intrusion. And then call it leaking in the very same sentence at the site since at least May 2011. The company chose to do nothing out of fear of the high cost of $1 billion would cause investment markets to consider the company bankrupt. So they killed the planet rather than go bankrupt. And there's not a nuclear company out there won't do the exact same. And a lot have already done it. And then saying it leaked out of the nuclear meltdowns is almost too much to bear, isn't it? It leaked. It leaked. It was a leak. It was just a leak, Dan. It was a few bananas got out. We should find a picture of some of the reactors. Let me show you what they call a leak. It's pretty remarkable, actually. Here's one picture. This is what they call a leak, look. The building doesn't even exist anymore. That's a leak, Dana. Don't you know? He only admitted this in July 2013. It's leaking, leaking, leaking out. Leaking out. Come on, everybody sing it at one time now. It's leaking, leaking, leaking out. The government said at the time allowed TEPCO to avoid clear admission of the problem, and because first off they were nationalized right away. They are the government, and the underground wall, the ice wall. Why wouldn't you build a real wall? To help TEPCO avoid financial repercussions. So let's make everybody sick so nobody can complain, and everybody's too busy trying to survive. The underground steel wall was put into the long-term projects category and then was never done. That's right, because they've done an ice wall. Literally the stupidest construction in history was an ice wall. Officials in the Japanese government cooperated with TEPCO, lied to the public to help TEPCO hide the existence of the leaks and the urgent need for an underground wall. Well, if it's a leak, you don't need an ice wall wrapped around the whole site. That's not a leak. That's an event, isn't it? When talk of the ice wall project began this year, 2013, officials in the government gained the impression the steel wall wasn't done due to technical challenges rather than the reality. TEPCO simply didn't want to pay the cost. You didn't need an ice wall. You know why? Because the buildings ejected a reactor core somewhere else. The ice wall was to make you think that the stuff was still in the buildings. And who, by goodness sakes, would do that to you? If anybody that tells you it's leaking got a lot of bananas in their closets, I can tell you that much. Dr. Jekyll, I'm assuming. What do we got going on here? TEPCO chose to not stop the water leaks. They admitted that their incompetence contributed to the nuclear disaster, and this is unlikely to be any real emission or behavior change for the company. Oh, they can lie. They can tell the truth all they want. We lied to you. No one's going to do anything about it. The shareholders won't sit by and let you do anything about it. Nuclear should never be on the stock market. It's the idiot. It's the best way to destroy a planet is put nuclear on the stock market. There have been talks said of TEPCO and the government's agency involved. The TEPCO should be split into two companies, one that handled the nuclear meltdowns and the other one to run their functional divisions. So then the one that handles the nuclear meltdown goes bankrupt, the other company continues to rake in profit, right? And they're the same company. This would effectively allow TEPCO to walk away from disaster with no repercussions for the company. I bet you they were like, yeah, this is great, let's do that. International Atomic Energy Agency knew of Japan's lax reactor safety in the 1990s and were unable to do anything. They're not regulatory agencies. They can't compel anybody to do anything. They're United Nations' little pet monster, right? Nuke monster. Once a nuke monster, always a nuke monster, I like to say. It briefly mentioned issues that the International Atomic Energy Agency had as far back as 1990 with Japan's failing nuclear safety. They found 90 deficiencies in safety procedures. But who's the third biggest donator to the International Atomic Energy Agency? Oh, yeah, that's right, Japan. And when they stroke a pen, a donation is usually around $20 million each time. It's a pretty big incentive not to clap back, isn't it? As of 2002, the International Atomic Energy Agency did not know if anything had been done to solve the problem. And they had not been invited back by Japan. Of course, Japan is the biggest donor right now to the International Atomic Energy, or the third biggest donor to the International Atomic Energy Agency. This problem with the International Atomic Energy Agency and their lack of ability to enforce anything has been criticized by many since the Fukushima disaster. No, their job is to write the cover-up and then implement it. That's the International Atomic Energy Agency's job, is to cover up a nuclear event. Details that came out in 2002 showed widespread aging damage in critical parts like the core shrouds, the critical water circulation pipes, the steam dryers of all things, and other critical systems for reactor safety. And one of the specific concerns was TEPCO's clandestine patch job repairs the cracked core shrouds to full inspectors. And TEPCO also did a clandestine repair on the core spray system Unit 1 at Fukushima Daiichi. And this is a critical portion of the emergency system intended to stop a meltdown. And in 2011, we are still getting hints that nothing had changed as workers had no emergency venting manual and had to scramble to get a copy of a reactor blueprint from a subcontractor and create a plan on the fly. And then workers then had to scavenge equipment and implement their on-the-fly venting plan. The ongoing human impact from Fukushima Daiichi, January 15, 2015, the town of Futaba, which is a nuclear wasteland. Like, how can you live in a community that's joined onto a nuclear plant? How can you be that complacent, I wonder? Oh, you watch TV? Oh, I see. One of the two towns that host the remains of the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant has agreed to allow the town to be used as a temporary nuclear waste dump. And radiation levels continue to be extremely high in the town, leaving most to assume they can never return. And no permanent nuclear waste dump exists in Japan or anywhere else on the planet. Outside of Fukushima, the lack of good oversight of nuclear industry-related antiques is still a problem. As Japan's current government is pushing for reactor restarts, the town at the center of the issue was found in a nuclear scandal. 2 assemblymen were found to have ties to and are being paid by family-owned companies that work for the nuclear plant. While not currently illegal in Japan, the obvious conflict of interest shows how hard it is for the public will be to follow instead of business interests. A citizens group in Japan has filed a second lawsuit against the government and TEPCO officials for negligence that led to the Fukushima disaster. The first lawsuit is still a back and forth. Prosecutors refused to pursue the case. I fought the law, and the law was corrupt. Japan's industry ministry has agreed to a new rule that would force power consumers to pay a fee towards reactor decommissioning in Japan. And this fee would apply even if the power company used doesn't have a nuclear fleet. And we covered this years ago, right? So if you were a solar company, you still had to, whoever was buying power from you still had to pay a surcharge on their bill every month. And that money went into a decommissioning fund because Japan, just instead of like a normal country where they take a percentage of the money for decommissioning the plant because it could take 100 years, they just gobble up all the money and give it out to the shareholders and everybody's partying and happy. And when something goes wrong, there's no money there. The taxpayers have to get a checkbook with no accountants. And they know it. That's why they're doing it that way. So new renewable, this is why they're on the stock market, so you can never get rid of them. So new renewable energy companies will be forced to collect this fee from consumers to benefit the old nuclear utilities. The Price-Anderson Act, like James Lewis mentioned that earlier, that was about taking the responsibility of an accident away from the company and putting it on the taxpayers. So the company was only legally responsible for a couple of $1 billion. But a nuclear accident will always do $500 billion or more damage. So new renewable energy companies would be forced to collect this fee from consumers to benefit the old nuclear utilities. Because they just stole all the profits, never put anything in the kitty to decommission the facilities, had no plan of decommissioning it. And we see this with the industry worldwide. It's a hateful industry. Japan has had an existing decommissioning plan where power companies were supposed to set aside funds for the work. The funds were collected from consumers, but the funds are apparently not required to be segregated from other corporate money. So it isn't clear what the status of these funds actually is. Or they're paid out in dividends to the shareholders. every single month. As with most events that have transpired since the disaster, the rights and the needs of an individual are ignored. TEPCO knew of the need for groundwater bypass in 2011 May. There wasn't a nuclear scientist on the planet that didn't know it. TEPCO knew of the needs to install a groundwater bypass system back in May 2011, yet chose to not undertake the project. No, they purposely destroyed the planet. This was about killing the planet and killing the species. United States Non-Regulatory Commission, well, they're supposed to be the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, but clearly they're not a regulatory commission, told TEPCO in May that they should install a groundwater bypass type system uphill of the reactors. TEPCO never acted on it until 2013, and the Nuclear Regulatory Commission's suggestions seem to indicate the bypass system should have been uphill of the plant itself rather than directly near the reactors, as in the case of the ice walls, right? It seemed to indicate that the Nuclear Regulatory Commission knew the groundwater flowed at the plant because it was built on a river. They filled it up with 100 foot of shale or something. They do this at all these sites so that when it melts down, it goes down into a river. And the water is always passing over the melted reactor core. And they can pretend nothing is going wrong. Right? A plausible denial why everything dies and withers forever. The NRC knew the groundwater flows at the plant were contaminating the Pacific, yet did nothing in the last 2.5 years to protest, inform the public, or otherwise do the right thing on the issue. They too choose to keep TEPCO secret while the plant continued to push contaminated water to the sea. So the contamination is flushed straight down to the bedrock, and then the old river rushes it straight out into the Pacific Ocean. All of it. You can't fill it up in tanks. You're talking about multiple sieverts per liter. You can't build any more tanks if you fill up a tank. So the tanks are empty. You can't get near. If you fill up a tank of just beta, you're talking about 1.4 million sieverts. You can't filter it, and you can't do that because first off, it's putting off so much energy you can't walk within a couple of 100 feet of it without getting a lethal dose immediately, without melting your organs. Strontium-90 will contaminate the coastal groundwaters in 10 years. This was 2013. So it's pretty known that in these nuclear meltdowns, strontium-90, after about 1,000 days or so, will be a 100-to-1 ratio of the cesium-137, which is unbelievably prolific. Not as prolific, of course, as the curium isotopes, which are the biggest byproduct of the radiated fuel, and are much worse than strontium-90. But strontium-90 is a huge concern because you're talking about mutating the stem cells of all the species that use water. And guess how many species on this planet uses water? Strontium-90 found to be leaking out of the ponds installed by TEPCO. Again, right, to contaminate the coastal groundwater near the plant in 10 years. Certain ponds at the plant held a backwash sludge water from the reverse osmosis system. The high levels contaminate with high level. Again, this is simply not true because the numbers they're talking about, you won't be able to go near the facility. It was flushed directly out into the ocean. This was an interesting story. A lot of these stories are written as the cover story for an event, right? Fukushima Daiichi floods and shows a lack of preparedness. News reports, what year was this? It's there somewhere. December 22nd, 2000 and something. Is it here? No. Maybe if I go over to the other screen, I might see the date. 2016. A news report indicates that the groundwater at Fukushima Daiichi has risen so high it broke the surface and flowed into the port as a recent typhoon passed through the area. As TEPCO prepares to close the steel seawall and freeze the underground frozen wall, NRA stopped the process for a review of the potential for flooding within the reactor building area. As TEPCO prepares to close the steel seawall, and freeze the underground frozen wall, which didn't work, the Nuclear Regulatory Agency stopped the process for a review of the potential for flooding within the reactor buildings area. Because if you build a wall, the typhoon or whatever comes in, the water becomes liquefaction, so that all the buildings become unstable because the water starts looking like quicksand, right? The mud and everything, ground turns into quicksand. And because they bulldozed high-level radiation into the ground originally with remote-control bulldozers, the last thing you want is water coming up with that stuff on it. And this is a big problem at this site. And this is why you can't find any homeless in Japan anymore. The conclusion was that TEPCO thought they could sufficiently remove excess groundwater with sump pump sub-drain systems near the reactor buildings. So they brought in, this is the alleged story, that they brought in these trucks, and these trucks are going to pump up highly radioactive water with these sump pump trucks. They're meant for pumping out sewage tanks and stuff like that. And again, this is simply not going to work because you can't get in the truck. You can't drive the truck. And people on the road are going to get a brutal doses from the gamma shines, the X-rays, the neutron bombardments, the beta rays. I thought it was a really interesting story because my instant thought was exactly that. Well, how are you going to move the truck once you fill it up? If you're pumping up water right alongside the reactor from wells that were drilled, you're talking about lethal doses on the hoses, just walking past the hoses. How's someone supposed to drive the truck? How are you supposed to disconnect? Were these trucks ever used again? Like, this is a nightmare. This is a nightmare. So it can't be true. They put out the story as a cover story. As TEPCO prepares to close the steel wall and freeze the underground frozen wall, this is ludicrous to suggest they could do that. The conclusion was TEPCO thought they could sufficiently remove excess groundwater with a sump pump sub-drain system near the reactor buildings. So you can remove excess groundwater. It's impossible not. If it's on the site, it's going to be incredibly contaminated. Part of the frozen wall process left a set of openings in the wall and the land side, allowed water to flow into the area. This also concerns the groundwater dropping too low, allowing contaminated water to flow into the reactor building's basement. Like, the story of the basement, again, is a very slippery slope. Do you really think that they're pumping stuff out of the basements of these buildings? Is there anybody that gullible when you look at these pictures actually think there's someone going down in the basement and with a pump? And like, if you pump stuff into the basement of this and you walk past the hose for a minute, 2 minutes, you drop dead. Your organs melt. Yeah, you might keep walking for 10 minutes, but then you're going to squat down, drop your pants, and excrete your organs because they melted, just like we've seen at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And they'll find you squat down dead if you don't fall over it. It's non-survivable. You can't survive that environment, right? Okay. We're going to finish out this story. And because I can't keep my eyes open. I'm so tired from today. I'm busted up. I gave it my all today, and my all was a bit too much. I got her done, though. I'll suck it up. By tomorrow, I'll feel better, I'm sure. With all this reviews, nobody can see the need for more water removal capacity. TEPCO ended up employing some sort of makeshift pump. And also using septic tank trucks to pump up water. Well, this is, but there's no indication they're actually at Fukushima. This picture doesn't prove they're at Fukushima. You're not, like, there's no one getting close to these reactors to pump up water. Just a random guy driving a sump truck is not going to end up on TEPCO's website and be allowed to drive up close to these buildings and suck up water, because it's simply never going to happen. It's a funny story, though, isn't it? So what are they up to with these stories? Well, they're trying to convince you they got it under control, right? Because something leaked out, a story leaked that came out, and this was their cover story. These efforts appear quite desperate as the septic tank trucks only hold small amounts of water. The trucks were added to the on-site equipment to deal with rainwater that would build up around the storage tanks on the hill, which is evidence that the tanks are empty. Because you are not going around in highly radioactive tanks and sucking up water outside the tank facilities. If you fill up the tanks with water you're pouring over a reactor core, because that's the official story, you can't get near the hose. These are lethal doses by the liter, just from gamma shines and X-rays, neutron bombardments, and beta rays. TEPCO has also paved over much of the plant site to prevent rainwater from adding to the contaminated groundwater, and also to stop the gamma shines, X-rays, neutron bombardments from blasting up from the ground, right? And because you have China syndromes, you have steam coming out of the ground at 10 sieverts per hour in 6 places. This is why they're paving over and putting steel plates down, pouring cement on top of that, and then paving that over, is so that they can get back in the site with the homeless, right? That's really what's going on. These are just the craziest headlines conceivable we went through tonight. It's heartbreaking stuff, isn't it? Baby food is irradiated, and they just don't care. There's no incentive. There's no incentive for them to be scared, see? That's all 4 sides of Reactor 4. But there's no incentive for them to be good people. There's no one going to hold them accountable. And there's so many generations of inbreeding, they don't have any incentive to be a good steward of the planet, so to speak. Their instinct, by the way, is to be evil. If it's evil, let's do that instead. Let me see what we got going on here. Okay, well, I'm not sure if I'll make it back tomorrow night. I'll try. I can tell you one thing right now. If I had to set it up tonight for tomorrow night, I couldn't do it. I'm just burnt out. I'm happy that we made it this far. I gotta have a look now, see how far I made it. How far was my pathetic attempt tonight? I wonder. Oh, we got an hour and a half in. Woo-hoo. Well, alrighty. Let's close the poll down. How about that? My brain doesn't even work. It's just so weird. Should degenerate Japan recall billions of pounds of radioactive rice and other foods sold each year to preserve human life? It's just shot in the dark. 2 people accidentally voted no. Wow, what's the odds of that? 2 people voting no in the one night. That's crazy. If you made it this far, don't forget to give me a thumbs up. It probably won't show up because the nuclear industry runs this YouTube, right? Yeah, it's safer to eat plastic than it is to eat rice. Alrighty, I guess that's it for us tonight. That's all I got. I apologize for being so tired. Not my usually chippy self. We're going to play the Calm Down Charlie song. It seems to keep him away. It's like a scarecrow for Calm Down Charlie, right? The song is? keeps them nervous, keeps them away. We'll see everybody. I'm not going to say tomorrow night, but hopefully tomorrow night. I don't know if I'll be making it back tomorrow. I got a feeling I won't be able to stand up tomorrow. But I will try, so check in tomorrow night. Just in case, if you're up to that. And if you like this kind of stuff, don't forget to give us a thumbs up. Have a nice day. We'll see everybody on the next show. Take care, folks.
In the Tokyo Bureau, swirling smoke and neon beams. Chicago division, fueled by heated dreams. Calm down, Charlie calls in, voice smooth as silk. Says, Dana, you're dreaming, don't cry over spilt milk. On Dana Durnford show, the chatter's turning wild, but Charlie shoots it down with that cool cat style. Unit 3's no killer, no harm to see life. He chuckles in the static, cuts through the strife. Oh, calm down, Charlie, with his nuclear charm. He says starfish are just fine, there's no alarm. His words dance on airwaves with a confident glow. Calm down, Charlie steals the whole radio show. With a snap and a grin, Charlie's voice so clear scatters the dread, dispels all the fear. Mux didn't hurt, he croons with a sigh. Science is for thinkers, not a whim or lie. Though Dana and the crowd may shout and roar, Charlie's unfazed, he's heard it all before. His swinging rationale, like a soothing song, says, hold on to logic, we gotta stay strong. Oh, calm down, Charlie, with his nuclear charm. He says starfish are just fine, there's no alarm. His words dance on airwaves with a confident glow. Calm down, Charlie steals the whole radio show.